I know how confusing it is to get started investing. I've been there and done that. I've been in debt. I've made all the mistakes you can imagine, and I've now built up a multiple six-figure investing portfolio. I've also learned a ton along the way, and in this video, I'm going to show you the best order to invest your money to make the most of it. First up, before you do any kind of investing or even think about it, you need to sort out your you-know-what out. At this point, it's a good reminder to think about your finances like a house. If you build a house on sand, it's going to fall right down. So you've got to build those strong foundations in order to make it somewhere nice to live. Getting these things sorted first are going to make things that come later a lot easier. Now, these aren't sexy or exciting, and I'm not here to teach people how to suck eggs, but the reality is that there are many people in the UK who just aren't saving any money at all. If you don't save any money, then you can't invest any money. It's as simple as that. And I think the best way to deal with all of this is just head on. You've got to make a budget, you need to know where your money is going and what you're spending it on, and then you need to have an honest conversation about what's important. If you can cut some things out that you don't need, that's great, but I think it's far better to focus on getting more money in than just cutting everything. Easier said than done, I get it, but once you've got this part under control, your first mission is to get some kind of emergency fund sorted out. Now, finance experts recommend anything from 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, but my personal opinion is that this is completely up to you. It all depends on your own situation, but you do need some kind of access to cash that can't just be a credit card. Ideally, you need to know that when everything hits the fan, you can cover an unexpected cost, or even worse, pay your bills in the event that you lose your job for a month or two. You'll feel way better once you sort this part out, and it will make the next few steps so much easier to do. Now, I keep my cash in a savings account that I can access at any point, which, touch wood, I've not needed to just yet. An emergency savings pot could be anything from just a few £100s to multiple thousands, but whatever that amount is right for you, I still really think that this part is important as it shows that you're capable of managing your money and saving more than you spend. The stats in the UK unfortunately show that most people don't get out of this first step. So if you can get this far, you're already doing pretty well and should give yourself a pat on the back. Okay, the next step is starting to get serious and is so important even before you get started with investing. You've got to focus on paying off any high interest debt. I've been in plenty of debt before and it's a great feeling once you can get out of it. It can easily creep up on you in different loans, credit cards and bills. Before you know it, you're paying hundreds a month just to stay afloat. Now, when I say high interest debt, I'm not talking about things like your mortgage or student loans, although we will touch on mortgages a bit later. I'm really talking about unsecured loans and credit card debt, which is typically going to have an interest rate of anything from 9% to 35% and above. Right now, the average APR rate on a credit card in the UK is 35.5%. So if you're able to pay this debt off, this means that you're getting a return of more than 35% on your money. Now, there is almost nowhere where you can get a guaranteed return on your money for 35%. In fact, if anyone did tell you that they could guarantee that kind of return, I'd be running as far away as I could from them. However, when it comes to paying off debt, this is a guaranteed return, and paying it off first before you do any other step is vital. There's two popular ways of paying off debt if you have multiple credit cards, loans, or any other balances. You have the snowball method and the avalanche method. Basically, the snowball method says pay off the smallest balances first. That way you can get to clear them off and you get that feel-good factor for doing it, and then work your way through the rest. Whereas the avalanche method says tackle the debts with the biggest interest rates, as technically this is going to make you better off, but it will be less satisfying as it might take a bit longer to feel the progress. At this stage, some people would suggest consolidating debts and using balance transfer offers on credit cards. Now, you could do this, but there are plenty of people out there who do that and then end up letting that debt roll over onto very expensive interest rates. So this one really is a personal decision. Right, next up, we need to talk about pensions, and this is where things get interesting. Don't switch off right now. If you're an employee in the UK, then it's highly likely that you are paying into a workplace pension every single time you get paid. Unless you've opted out or you're self-employed, you've probably been automatically enrolled into a pension, so it's time to finally understand where all of your money's been going. Your pension is likely to be your second biggest asset after your home if you're lucky enough to get on the ladder. So sorting this out and understanding it is vital. It's funny that we probably spend more time choosing the colour of our kettle and toasters than we do focusing on our pensions. They can be a boring topic and they can get very complicated, but I think that just most people need to know a few basics and they could end up far better off in retirement. So here's what everyone needs to know. As a legal minimum, you will contribute 5% of your income into a workplace pension every time you get paid, and your employer will contribute 3%. Your 5% contribution will include the tax relief, so I hope this graphic on screen now will help you picture this a bit more easily. Now, it's worth saying that this type of pension is called a defined contribution one, and is much more common in the private sector. If you work in the public sector, maybe you're a teacher or you work in the NHS, then your pension is slightly different, and it will likely be a defined benefit one. Typically, this will mean that you'll be paying more into your pension each month, but in return, you'll get a guaranteed payment when you retire. For everyone else on defined contribution pensions, we won't know how much we'll end up with, as this will depend on how well our investments do. Now, I could make a lot more videos on this topic alone, and I've covered parts in other videos, but let me just leave you with 4 really important things I think everyone should do with their workplace pensions. Firstly, it goes without saying that you need to make sure you're in one. You could have opted out without thinking, so just check that you are paying into a workplace pension. Secondly, see if your employer offers any match or any additional contributions that you can put in. Some employers will happily put in more than their legal minimum, and for every % extra you put in, they'll add in another one as well. There's nothing better than getting free money, so this one is always worth a check with whoever looks after your pensions at work, whether it's HR, payroll, or someone else. Thirdly, check who your pension provider is for your workplace. It's typically going to be a big company like Scottish Widows, Aviva, Aegon, Legal & General, or maybe even Nest. Go and find out what your pension is invested in. Take that letter, which you probably ignore, log into your account if you haven't made one, actually create that account in the first place, and see where your money is going. If you don't choose where you want your pension money to get invested, it gets chosen for you, and it will be invested into a default option. This default option is typically very conservative with risk and might not be best suited for you. Now, in my personal view, this is essential to go and find out what you're invested in and see what your options are. If you need help choosing and understanding how to get through all these investments, I've made tons of videos on my channel to help. And finally, if you are a higher rate or an additional rate taxpayer, then you could claim back money that you put into your pension. You could get an additional 20% or 25% as tax back for any money that you put in above the basic rate band. Now, I'll leave a link to the HMR website if you want to make any claims. There is literally billions left unclaimed here. Don't be the person leaving money on the table. Right, moving on, here's where ISAs come in, which are your individual savings accounts. Many people in the UK will be aware of things like a cash ISA, but less people understand or use the other types. As well as the cash ISA, you have the stocks and shares ISA, the lifetime ISA, and the innovative finance ISA. Each tax year, every UK adult can put in up to £20,000 in total across all of these. You can use all of them, or you can just use one type of account. It's up to you. The limit is not 20k each though. It's 20k in total that you can put in. The only exception being the lifetime ISA, which has a £4,000 limit each year. Now, whatever ISA account you use, the benefits are that you'll pay no capital gains tax, no dividends tax, or no tax on interest from savings. Basically, any money you make is completely tax-free, and there are no limits to what your money can grow to, especially if you use a stocks and shares ISA and make 100 times your money on a very lucky investment. As I mentioned just then, a lot of people in the UK will be aware of the cash ISA, where you can save your money and get interest, but a lot fewer people use accounts like a stocks and shares ISA and the lifetime ISA. If you want to invest your money tax-free and be able to buy investments in the stock market, then you will need to use a stocks and shares ISA or a lifetime shares ISA. In my opinion, if you're not using an ISA account to do your investing, you are completely missing out and putting your future earnings at risk from taxes. Make sure you're not using a general investing account when really you should be using an ISA. For me personally, all of my investing is done either inside an ISA or a self-invested personal pension, which I'll be talking about next. I use 2 different investing apps to do this, and if you also want to open an ISA to get yourself started investing, there's never been a better time. One of the apps I use is Trading 212, and anyone using my link below in the description and depositing just £1 can get a free fractional share up to the value of £100 as a welcome bonus. They offer a free stocks and shares ISA, and you can choose from thousands of different investments from all over the world. If you have the app already installed or don't use my link, you can use the promo code Toby to get your free share. This must be done within 10 days of opening an account, and you can find it in the settings of your app by pressing the button with the 3 lines here. Another investing app I use is called Every Single Month and see what I invest in, as I share my portfolios here on YouTube. Okay, next up, let's talk about self-invested personal pensions, which are often shortened to SIPPs. Now, arguably, some of you might think that a SIPP could be more important than using an ISA, and you could make the case that you should prioritise the use of a SIPP. Basically, a SIPP is your own private pension, and you can have as many of these accounts as you like. The rules can get pretty complicated, but here they are in short without all of the messy details. You can put in up to £60,000 per tax year into your pension, or 100% of your income. So if you earn £35,000 a year, in theory, if you did have some savings or maybe an inheritance, you could put in a full £35,000 that tax year into your pensions. Do note though that this amount includes tax relief, and it also includes what you've paid in through your workplace pension. So you would have to make sure that you add all of it up together. Basically, your allowance for pensions is all combined together, whether it's a workplace one or a private one like a SIPP. Now, unlike an ISA, a SIPP has different benefits and more restrictions. The current rules at the time I make this video are that you can't withdraw money from your SIPP until you're at least 55 years old. Now, this age limit is rising up to 57 in 2028, and we should assume that it will rise further in the future alongside the state pension age. Also, when it comes to withdrawing money from your SIPP, you can take 25% of it tax-free, which can be done as a lump sum or multiple smaller amounts. But then this leaves the rest of it, which will be taxed at your marginal rate, which just means whatever income tax bracket you find yourself in. Now, the biggest benefit of pensions is the tax relief. So purely from a financial perspective, paying money into a SIPP is very tax efficient. By default, any money you put in gets tax relief claimed back. So for example, every £100 you put into a SIPP, a £25 tax relief will get claimed by the provider and added to your account after about 8 to 10 weeks or so. That's a pretty good return on investment when you think about it, and over the years, that can really add up. Now, higher rate and additional rate taxpayers can claim back even more, and I'll leave that link in the description below to the HMRC website where you can submit a claim if you've not been doing this already. You can also do this through your self-assessment form, but either way, do not leave this part out if you've been a higher rate taxpayer. As I said earlier, there are billions left unclaimed each year. Also, as a bit of a bonus tip, you can go back through previous tax years and you might even be due back a payment of many thousands of pounds. Now, if you do want to set up a SIPP account, one of the places I currently use is InvestEngine. And as I mentioned earlier, you can get a bonus of up to £100 for signing up and opening your account once you deposit at least £100. There are no fees to open the account, and there are no ongoing fees as well. You can then choose to invest in loads of different types of investment, and if you need some help, you'll find videos on my channel talking you through the options. Now, I wasn't sure where I'd put this next section when I was putting this video together, but I think here is about right. If you've got kids and you've still got money left after your own ISAs, pensions and everything else, then this could be a great place to put additional money. Your kids under the age of 18 can each have their own ISA and SIPP, and you can put in money every tax year, which will turn into regular accounts when they turn 18. The allowance for junior ISAs is currently £9,000 per tax year, and the allowance for junior SIPPs is currently £3,600, which includes the tax relief they will receive. Yes, even though they don't have a job and aren't paying any tax, they will still get basic rate relief on their pensions. One of the best things about accounts like this is that starting investing early is one of the best things any of us can do. The more time we have in the market and the more time we have until we need to use that money means that we can get through any downturns and benefit from the effects of compound interest. Now, the only downside is that when they turn 18, they could get access to their ISA and spend all of that money on a banged up Corsa, which probably isn't a very good investment. It's all up to you to try and give them some financial education along the way. Good luck, you've got 18 years to try and teach them. Okay, next up, once you've made the most of your ISAs and SIPPs, the world is your oyster when it comes to investing your money. You might not get any more great tax benefits, but you can still use accounts like a general investing account with no restrictions. These are just regular accounts that let you invest your money however you like, but you do need to keep an eye on taxes. Any gains you make or dividends you receive may be liable to taxation depending on your own situation. For example, at the time of making this video, the tax-free allowances for dividends and capital gains have been cut significantly compared to just a few years ago. For dividends, we all get an allowance of £500 each tax year before we have to pay tax, and then for capital gains, we each get £3,000 in a tax year before we need to declare that and pay what we owe. The rates of tax you pay depends on what income tax bracket you fall into, and the tax rates for dividends and capital gains are slightly different. You can easily find what they are, and remember that it's your responsibility to report any gains above and beyond your allowances to HMRC. You can do this through a self-assessment form, which is relatively straightforward, and I'm sure if you've reached this far in the video, you'll probably be quite familiar with them anyway. This is also a good reminder that if you can, you probably want to move any investments you have in a general investing account into an ISA, as in the long run, you then won't have to worry about any taxes like this. Right, next up is another one of those things which you can make a good argument for almost anywhere, as it's a totally personal choice. Paying off your mortgage early is something a lot of people would love to be able to do, and there are lots of amazing stories out there about people doing it in super short periods of time. You always hear how much of a weight it is off their shoulders once it's paid off, and all that money they used to give to the bank can now be spent or invested somewhere else. Now, paying off your mortgage early is not something that makes financial sense, as typically most people are paying interest rates that are much lower than you might expect to make from other kinds of investments. However, just like any other debt, if you pay off a mortgage early, you know exactly what you're going to get, and there is no risk involved in doing this. But there is, of course, that opportunity cost, which means that most likely it's going to be much better financially to invest elsewhere. In recent years, interest rates have been rising in the UK, which has been pushing up the rate of interest that people are paying on their mortgages. A few years ago, when rates were much lower, it made a lot less sense to pay off your mortgage early, as the saving was just so low when you're comparing it to anything else. Now, you could make the argument that it's a good time to do it, especially if you know you're about to get a new mortgage or remortgage on a higher rate. This one really is a personal choice though, as in my opinion, I'd much rather focus on other things in this list, like maxing out pension contributions and ISA investments. Also, if you really wanted to, there's nothing stopping you from doing this all at once alongside investing. You could overpay your mortgage by just a small amount each month to shave off a year or two at the end. I'm sure we'll see at least one comment below that will tell us just how invaluable it was to have the headache of a mortgage completely gone. Right, one before last now, and I just wanted to highlight a point here that often gets left out in these type of videos. Don't forget to enjoy yourself along the way and try and find the right balance of making the most of today. I'm definitely guilty of trying to maximize everything in my life for investing, but there's no point in just trying to make the most money and end up as the richest person in the graveyard. None of us know what's going to happen in the future, so maybe give yourself a bit more slack and ask yourself the question, am I investing too much? If you've made it this far in the video and you've already maxed out the main types of account, then in my opinion, I think there's a good argument to also really think about what you're spending your money on outside of investing. I'm not saying go and buy the most expensive things you can find just to spend your money, but I'd definitely say that you should focus on what makes you happy and what makes you tick. Now, rather than material things, this could be more experience focused. It might be traveling, trying new restaurants, or going to see your favorite comedian. I think these things are worth far more than material objects that are always less exciting anyway once you own them. Just worth a thought, and now let's talk about the final thing you can do. So you've made it to the final boss of investing, and just like I've said before, the world's your oyster here. If you've got more money to invest and you're still looking for ideas, here's where we've got things like private investments, angel investing, venture capital, enterprise investment schemes, and anything at all you can think about that goes alongside that. There's a huge market out there for people with money, and there are plenty of business ideas out there that might just need some money as a head start that could end up being the next billion-dollar thing. All of these things are far more risky when compared to investing in the S&P 500 or some kind of global index fund inside a stocks and shares ISA. And there's certainly less protection when it comes to looking after your money, as these areas are a lot less regulated and you could lose everything you put in. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on any of these types of investing, and I think this is where you definitely want to seek the advice of a financial advisor who specializes in these kinds of areas. I'm sure if you've got loads more money to invest, you're probably already in the kinds of circles where you're talking about these investments. However, let me just say that I don't think you should neglect all of the other steps first, as just because an investment sounds complicated and exciting does not mean it will be a good investment. A simple portfolio is not any worse than a complicated investing portfolio. I always find it quite odd that we try and complicate things as a way to make them look better than they are. That's total nonsense. Now, if you want to see what I'm investing in this year and how I manage my money, then feel free to watch this video next, where I share all my investments and plans ahead. I'll see you in the next video. Happy investing.